Hello, folks. Today we are allowed to dedicate ourselves to a Spiegel television documentary again, namely Hell's Angels versus Bandidos. It's a bit of an older documentary, I believe, from around the year 2010. I can't verify that right now. Nice to have you with us. Game TV, yes, otherwise everywhere forbidden, forbidden, forbidden. Copyright protected and similar things. That is also about copyright. That's completely fine. I just find it very unfortunate that then some, especially in the public law area, do not provide this. I think that one should then also be able to react to content. I have no problem with it when people tear me apart, attack me, post something, and so on, as long as it is true and it is not taken out of context. It is completely fine for me. Yes, Germany divided, that was the big plan, which then in the end didn't work out as many had imagined, probably in the clubs. Got a lot of trouble with it, up to murder and manslaughter. This divided cake, of course, still exists, but the insignia gone, club bans certainly also accompanied by a certain loss of power. And I would be happy if you knock on it with us so that it comes to YouTube afterwards. Who knows? So let's take a look at what Spiegel Television has to say. I'm going to take a quick look at the channel settings here again. It should be running now. Glad you're here. And then let's get started and take a look at this. Does television play that we're allowed to do this? Very rarely. Yes, Rocket gets expansions at any cost. That's one way to put it. I believe that was also the motto. Yes, the spirits that I summoned.
In 1999, the Bones switched their negotiator Frank Hanebutt to the much smaller Hells Angels in Germany.
Yes, look at how little manpower there was, so to speak, in 1999. We're talking about 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15, 17 charters in Germany. 10 men strong with support up to 250, maybe 300 people or something like that. Still very, very modest environment. Eastern Germany was not occupied then. Not occupied in Bavaria. What is this here? Thuringia, Saxony-Anhalt, Saxony. Then here's Lower Saxony, Bremen, Schleswig-Holstein 1. Saarland, Rhineland, Palatinate, North Rhine, Westphalia, also very thinly populated, after which there was also a lot going on. And Reutlingen, of course, Reutlingen must not be missing. I think we will see here again, but the must not be missing, but let's see what else. That's what it looked like in 1999. And then the Yellow Ghost Riders also joined the Bandidos.
Simultaneously, the Ruhr-based Ghost Riders joined the Bandidos. Since then, the two clubs have been growing. Especially in the past 5 years, the expansion has been massively pushed forward. In doing so, the supposedly strict admission rules are occasionally suspended. The aim is to force the opponent to their knees with mass.
Yes, that's quite a rapid expansion in 13 years. Considering you have to somehow get to know these people, you have to somehow integrate them, teach them the club rules, what we expect from you traveling among each other. Back then, at least in the Hells Angels area, you had to drive around and have a kind of travel book stamped, so to speak, to prove that you had visited all the chapters, charters, and so on. Then you also had to account to your sponsor charter, and there was no possibility to miss any party as a prospect charter or chapter, and so on. But as the story progresses with numerous chapters and characters, how can one familiarize themselves with everyone? That A lot has really been destroyed in this biker culture with this radical expansion.
An example can be found in Weimar, Thuringia. The local Bandido club quickly gained a reputation as a ruthless gang shortly after its founding. In various court cases, the alleged motorcycle enthusiasts are charged, among other things, with forming a criminal organization.
Yes, so Yanis, there will be some who watch this channel. They will tell Yanis that I have talked about him again. Yes, he is a public figure. He told me because he wouldn't be in the same room with me anyway. No, that's always, I miss many who then want to change and then somehow, and I really wish a lot of success in opening such a mercy call and so on. That's honorable. I said in a documentary that he puts dogs above humans. Yes, I find that concerning. I myself am dog friendly. I have 3 dogs myself. Still, I differentiate, and they are family members to us, and one must still establish a certain differentiation there. But I didn't quite watch the video. A few people sent me links or something, but he wouldn't go into a room with people like me and traitors and informants or those who have worked with the state in some way. Dude, it's totally fine. Well, it takes 2 to tango. So it was about, because I checked on Instagram and because I followed him. I have no idea. I mean, I follow a lot of people that I just sometimes observe. Some I don't follow, but I keep entering their names to see what they're doing on social media. Being a follower doesn't necessarily mean you like it. I sometimes don't understand when people say they've changed, they then somehow want to have a charity for a sanctuary. Somehow this is also a state matter that should be promoted and so on. But somehow everyone who works with bulls or whatever is stupid. I don't know, it runs contrary for me. I still wish you much success with the project at the sanctuary. There can't be enough people who stand up for animals, especially for somehow abandoned animals or animals that are given up, that no one takes anymore, that need to be cared for and so on. Yes, but it can sometimes be uncomfortable when it's done like that. I don't know. I don't watch these videos either, even if I don't want to put on the shoes at all. I didn't watch the videos from Cengiz or whatever it's called, Cengiz 44. I didn't watch them from Yanis either. Whoever still has an affinity for certain milieus and attitudes, and no matter how, it is also a misanthropy, then I don't want to have anything to do with that in my new life. The comments under such a video on his page reveal the intellectual level of his audience. So it's also about the book. The main thing is a Spiegel bestseller and has been shaped by a ghostwriter and so on. And I wrote my book myself over many, many years. It took 4 or 5 years. I don't really understand the problem, but that's how the internet is. It just glitches. Your name and Moritz. So Jan is definitely one of the most radiant figures among the Bandidos of East Germany. Yes, the face tattoo gives very high recognition value. From what one could see from the outside, I believe he led his charter very, very hard, very dominantly. I believe his vice president or sergeant or something later testified against him. That's probably where this very, very high rejection comes from. It's mentioned again and again with these Bandidos Jena, but I believe they were based in Weimar, had a club there. I think they were responsible for a lot of burglaries and such, partly violent crimes, red light district. They really stirred up the region. It was communicated like that. That was, I would say, a war scepter viewed from the outside. We thought, wow, like a few guys are really putting themselves right in the middle of enemy territory and saying, don't mess with us. That was quite a statement back then, you really have to say.
The leader is Jan S.E., convicted 9 times for assault alone. You noticed that quickly.
Yeah, but with the camera, that's crap, isn't it?
Attempted murders, the most serious.
Yeah, still, we have to break it down today. So served the penalty, I think, set just under a dime in the can. Yes, get the camera out of my face. So Janice was still a very media-oriented person who then always went towards the camera again and again. We also see the many other reporters here. Reports from the clubhouse indicate they repeatedly returned to club parties. Reporters also came. There were blatant overlaps, as similar ones teamed up with a scepter from New Münster, who at the time... I also ventured into enemy territory in Schleswig-Holstein despite the risks. Figures like Peter Borchardt from the far right and the two scepters have already caused a stir, so into an enemy country and then to say we fight, we go to war and no step back. They also found each other. There are also overlaps, photos here with Janice and with Peter Borchardt and so on together. I am still very, very aware of that. There were also always reports in the biker news and so the Bravo of the biker scene where one then dealt with it. I regularly visited pages like Rocker News and others that published newspaper articles. That was followed closely. They also had a homepage marking the first time rockers became media. So in social media, in reports, internet and so on, that you could follow it so well also via social media.
Bodily harm and gang-related theft. The Weimar rockers, with their leaders from West Germany, left hardly any paragraph of the penal code untouched. They were sentenced to a total of 47 years in prison.
The Bandidos settled here relatively early on, in our opinion, to dominate the scene. They filled a void in East Germany, as major rocker clubs like Hells Angels, Bandidos and Gremium were not yet present. And they certainly wanted to take advantage of this to establish a dominant position here.
Brotherhood and Secret of Freedom.
Yes, so these pictures, yes, one still remembers, I believe there were, that was also the chapter with the suicide of someone. There were such rumors driven into suicide, but there should have been an unhappy love or something else. But you can consume the stories, I believe, on the YouTube channel of Janice, whoever wants to. And yes, 47 years, 47 members would not be so much, so divided by 7, 8 people, that's quite a lot that they've collected.
Only hold for the president at the Weimar Bandidos. The club tyrant even demanded from a lower-ranking member that he should send his own girlfriend to the streets.
Yes, one always has to distinguish between Spiegel television reality and fiction here. I also don't know what task one or the other has made for themselves on the internet to embellish their story, to improve it, to be real or whatever else. I know everyone's talking about reels and it's not even aimed at Janice, but at so many others where the cool thing is. I just read a comment under the video, that's why I made it the topic today. I was into the topic. My story is embellished to appeal to everyone. So anyone who has listened to my series and watched it, who thinks it's a nice story, I can't help anymore. So anyone who thinks 20 years in right-wing extremism with constant police raids, with over 25 house visits regularly, trouble at all corners, violence, what kind of beautified story is that? What kind of beautified story is that? I sat in front of this comment and asked myself, is someone upset that you have now somehow arrived in a new life? That today a policeman is one of my best friends and mod on this channel. Matze, greetings, my friend. What is the fucking problem? Sometimes I don't understand that. Well, okay, just go to the video and look at the comments. I recommend that on YouTube.
In the clubhouse, which was converted into a fortress, human dignity was a foreign word. Here only the constantly changing will of the clubhead was important.
Yes, then you also don't know how... That's hard to say now. I find it challenging to ask for a brochure or trailer because they quickly run out. Those who were thrown out or didn't make it naturally claim it was a dictatorial system. President shit, vice president shit, Sarge shit, I always complained, I have to pay you money, club. Yeah, dude, you wanted your shit, 1% of the club, which is at war with the Hells Angels, somewhere in Thuringia. And sure, it's played hard there. So Janice and his companions will definitely not have advertised for it and said, Yes, join our coffee and cake club, 4 post meridian bratwurst at 6 post meridian, and everyone's in bed by 9 post meridian. All who chose it were aware of what occurred there. And rocker clubs are strictly hierarchically managed enterprises. It's about money, power. They are hypermasculine and hierarchical. Content falls down, inevitably. A famous picture of this exists, often shown. It exists as both a company and a rocker club. The president is at the top, followed by the vice president and Sarge. It keeps going down to the hangers and supporters who are swimming in excrement. Well, it's just like that, Ralph. Your gift, thank you, you dared. Nice that you're back with us. So you always have to look, okay, what does Spiegel Television say about it and how was it? But basically, I have to say, anyone who decides for the Rocker Club, he knows he must first eat shit until he becomes a member.
Was more at...
No, we don't want a park. Let's go.
I don't feel like dealing with this crap. Point it the other way, cocksucker.
I always have to say it. I've said it before. Stretch limos, never been cool. I don't know when stretch limos were ever in, maybe in the 60s. Turn off this camera. Everyone knows how I always feel about that. When you approach the camera and turn it off, I think it's actually a reflex, but when you see it a few years later, I think there's a bit of shame that kicks in, right?
The whole city suffered from the criminal bikers. In this bar, a bandido stabbed a guest with a knife.
There we often hit walls where witnesses did not make any statements. Even such witnesses who had only reported peripheral events had not even observed or could have observed the problematic core event. But we also had witnesses who had suffered massively under the actions of the bandidos who had also been harmed. Even with them, getting statements was extremely difficult. Even injured witnesses whose health was severely impacted have not always been fully transparent.
Yes, one must say, one must have understanding for, I must add. A group, no matter where, if they have a certain power and sovereignty in a city or have felt it and can then accordingly create fear work there. And then there are people who say, yes, I just stand by the side, I have seen it, but I am not hurt. None of my friends or loved ones are hurt. I didn't see anything. I don't want to go to court for the next 2 years and then into a courtroom with 30, 40 bikers and then make a statement there and whatever else. That's tough. I can only urge everyone to do so. Yes, nevertheless, the state has to somehow improve this. There must be other possibilities. Smart lawyers have to deal with this, how to avoid this gauntlet for witnesses, how this works. This must also be possible in the digital age and whatever else. This gauntlet to a court and whatever else, and to meet potential perpetrators beforehand and to be considered there with looks, sayings, and so on is concerning. And these are heavy, heavy, heavy steps. Even such a victim thinks, well, now I have been a victim once. If I continue here, then I might become a victim again. So, no, it's not that simple. Barbara Bartneck, respect goes out.
Neo-Nazis were evidently welcome among the rockers in Neumünster. Whether criminal or staunchly right-wing, the main thing is that the gang gets stronger.
Please have your identification cards ready. Please open your robes.
Do you have any dangerous objects with you?
So the Bandidos even recruited a certain Peter Borchert. The former National Democratic Party of Germany boss of Schleswig-Holstein is a notorious criminal.
Peter Borchert has had a lengthy far-right career. How long ago was Christian Borch involved? That was 30 years ago, right? 30, at least 25 years ago, I would say. Committed severe acts of violence, constantly stressed, even with Hell's Angels in Neumünster. Neumünster has long been a hotbed, especially around the Club 88, which existed for an extended period. Neumünster really, well, I don't know, when planning a vacation, whether Neumünster has to be on the list, I don't know. No idea, yeah, Neumünster is like that.
Even as a teenager, he stabbed a taxi driver. Borchert spent over 10 years of his life in jail.
A few more have been added after the documentary. Up there, I believe, you can see the fat Mexican as a necklace. As a necklace, it should always be commissioned by the media. Even our environment got wind of the fact that a kind of bounty was put on Peter Borchardt, that he was being hunted, that people were constantly being sought, that there were orders to find out in which apartments he sleeps, where he is registered, and so on. And as I said, don't underestimate Peter Borchardt. Some say he's no stranger to sorrow.
Enjoy your freedom. I assume that, right? We do? Yes, one enjoys what one can, right? Excuse me?
One enjoys what one can.
That's always a bad reporter when they understand so little, right?
I'm sorry, that's already smug in a North German way. That's already... Said something twice, had to repeat himself twice. I'm sorry, that's already smugly North German. It's already, unfortunately... Come on, he's already very good, isn't he? There you have bad reporters who understand so little. That was already unfortunately good, right? One has to admit. I would say that's a very, very North German smug way to counter.
The Bandidos press spokesman takes a relaxed view of the situation with Borchardt and the neo-Nazis.
We've seen a Borchardt here. Do you like to hang out with such a person?
I believe that's Misha or Michael. He also passed away, I believe died of cancer. We had another documentary on the subject 3 or 4 years ago who had a public relations team, who also had a patch on, who kept meeting with the press and expressing himself there. Yes, we have checked it beforehand, and there is nothing political remaining. And we said that it is very clear that there is no politics in our club and so on.
I haven't seen Mr. Borchardt here yet, and I can't say more about it. Yes, but he's also in our motorcycle club. That's how it is.
That's just the way it is?
Yes, so it's obvious that he's here too.
In 2010, Borchardt's Bandidos were banned due to excessive criminal activities.
That's just the way it is. Doesn't sound too enthusiastic. Excited band in Neumünster in 2010 have been driving since then, I believe, under the name Man Esbjerg or... Not Esbjerg. Padborg. Exactly, it's Padborg. Thank you. It's Padborg. It is Padborg. And then they teamed up to drive under Denmark and so on, because different laws apply there. No prohibition and continuation. It's a bit of a trick. You need to observe how long a state will monitor this. However, it has become relatively quiet since then. In Nordmünster, Schleswig-Holstein, when it comes to these rocker issues.
A short time later, they reappeared as Danes. The scene in Germany is expanding. In 1999, only 50 bikers wore an angel's vest.
So few, but they thought 10% per chapter. If I stood in 1999, there weren't 17 as counted before then. Theoretically, there were only 3 in each charter. Or was it then, were those the 50 before the change, before the bones probably went over? Those must have been the 3-4 chapters then that were there before the bones switched over.
12 years later, it's over 1,200.
Yes, I need to check the numbers again.
The Bandidos' membership grew by more than 300 in a single year.
Yes, taking in 300 people in 1 year. Taking in 300 people in 1 year, how can you maintain control, check if they fit in terms of humanity, friendship, character? I find it very difficult with these rapid admissions, with this.
At the same time, crime increased. In Berlin, rockers were sentenced to a total of 387 years in prison over 7 years. Many offenders have a migration background.
Those are quite a few years that have been distributed to them.
Justice and Victims Assistance Moabit and Tegel. The idea is also that drug trafficking, at least in recent years and decades, is predominantly a field of crime in the migrant scene. And since that brings in a lot of money, that will be a reason why migrants are brought into the biker clubs.
The so-called supporter clubs also have a steady influx from the migrant scene. Whether Chicanos or Malos, Red Devils or X-Team, they are all willing auxiliary troops of the old bikers. In some supporter clubs, only 1 in 10 has a motorcycle.
Yes, with the supporters, that was not so important. Spiegel Television reported that supporter clubs, such as the Red Devils, also operated as motorcycle clubs, MCs. Then there were the X-Teams, also with the Bandidos, where no motorcycles were required. There were also supporters and support clubs wearing 3-piece suits without a motorcycle club badge on the back. So there were very different attitudes towards that. At that time, it was really all about mass, mass, mass. It's worth noting that even in the major clubs, not just support clubs, they eventually stopped ensuring that all members had roadworthy motorcycles, or even had a motorcycle at all.
The motorcycle scene is neither racist nor right nor left, but I get very annoyed when one or the other only enters this scene to have their advantage or to handle their little deals, and those are things that have nothing to do with the actual meaning of the story.
Yes, it's a shame. It's a shame, yes. So we just saw Frank Hainer, but still, after my most dazzling personality that Germany ever had and has in the rocker scene, from the Bones to the Hells Angels. But it's exactly what he says, it didn't happen. I've met many of them in the Hanover area who were then transferred all over to Mecklenburg, Western Pomerania and so on, who were then sent away from Hanover. No one was even passionate there. Some didn't even feel like being part of the community. Not even interested in like, I'm in a club, I'm now a brother or something, but it was just cold business. It was always about back and business or being able to start a business, being a part of it somewhere. That's a nice thought, but it didn't work out at all.
Do the leading heads of the Hells Angels also find this, and have they critically noted it for internal use in a position paper? We forgot to train our new people. The result is more brothers not following our traditions. Wow.
Wow, intense. Do they understand what it means to be a health engineer? Do they understand what the club is all about? Are the right people involved? Are you willing to take the risk? Anything for the betterment of the club? Are they willing to risk anything for the betterment of the club? Yes, we are growing, but so are our adversaries. The police forces, along with other authorities, are using their growing powers against us and are slowly gaining the advantage. Expediting membership could allow police infiltration of our club. Neglecting to educate the new generation across countries and regions is a concerning statement. This introduces more new members who are being taught by members who themselves don't have enough knowledge about our club to guide and educate. Oh, it already was? Intense, right? Problem identified, but not resolved.
We have partly broken our own rules, which was right at the time, but will not happen again in the future. So we have taken on a member on a larger scale, and then a self-selection process has started, which is partly bumpy, and that is definitely negative. Yes.
There we have Rudolf Triller, called Django, I would say the spokesperson of the Hells Angels, with a very honest statement. Very bumpy, an understatement. I think such an old howdy has been around for 40 years or so. And when you then see how people change, in, out, member after 1 year, out again after 4 years, then back in, and then another club and so on, I believe for some of these old howdies, this is so unimaginable. Life changes, these clubs also change, but ideals have been left behind along the way.
The guy also got some through shots, hood brishes, and that is quite negative.
What Django means but doesn't want to say, it's about the change of the Bandidos Centrum. The group around the Turk Kadir Padir is notorious among investigators for being brutal.
I should also mention Kadir Padir is still in prison for the betting office murder. You can watch the documentaries by Kasra Zaragan, get the Book of the Persians. I have the book but haven't read it yet, as I'm still reading 2 other books. But I write a bit more in the winter. And still strange then with the Bandidos to see things and 2 days later you're wearing Indus clothes, right? For me, this is difficult. Without a grace period, even without a grace period you would have from 1 year, 2 years, it's still very, very fresh. It's like coming out of a 5-year love and 2 days later you have a new love and you're tattooing her name on your face. And you're carrying her panties in your jacket pocket. No idea. For me, these changes are simply difficult to understand and also not comprehensible.
They attacked their opponents multiple times, injuring them severely. So his men almost hacked off an angel's forearm. Kadir Padir was sentenced to 1 year on probation.
Given that the then president of the Bandidos was suspected of having attacked the Hells Angels, I believe vice president, with a machete. So you don't fraternize with such a man. Apparently, it has now come to the point where business interests, which are linked to shifts in power, are more valuable than club ideals.
Well, I think that's about how you could just leave it. Here, welcome to the Hells Angels Family Nomads Turkey from your Frankfurt brothers. Love and respect, Nomads Germany.
At 10, the migrant rockers take off their yellow Bandidos jackets and switch to the Hells Angels. And this, even though once even André Sommer from the Neubrüdern was seriously injured by Padia.
It has to be like that, you know, we're talking about at that time mortal enemy. I think it's slowly becoming a kind of coexistence. Is there a coexistence? I mean, you hear little about what the trouble is about. And then seeing it like that back then shocked the scene. So I don't know where this news was going around. We thought Berlin was lost too. Berlin is being lost to the Bandidos, who are asserting themselves against the Kadir Badir group. And then there was this bomb, this news. It is
like
a bomb. You have
actually been happy when Cardiopat somehow switched to a Heart Angel?
And it's always nice to be able to welcome new brothers into your family.
Is there nothing more to Cardia?
That's a brother. What else should I say? Yes.
So Andron C. Sommer has really been through a lot, diplomatically speaking, been through a lot. He also led one of the toughest troops, went through a lot with the shooting that Holger Bossen ordered his former president, depending on who is supposed to have helped himself to the club's cash, and blamed Andro C. Sommer for it. Yes, diplomatically chosen, I would say. That's a brother. You just have to know what the word brother still means in your life. Whether brother is then, again, behind friend.
Sommer was attacked near a small town in Brandenburg. He was traveling with club brothers when unknown people stopped their vehicles.
One simply thinks a Hells Angels president is traveling in another car.
Here are crime scene photos from the investigation file. Sommer was stabbed in the back. He checked himself into the hospital. He stayed quiet about the investigation out of biker's honor.
I'm part of an investigative authority. I've learned from an early age to take my life into my own hands, to handle my own affairs for myself. And that's also the reason why I do things the way I do them.
But you could have gone far with it back then, Fino Furt.
Yes, of course. A machete in a biker's car is a familiar concept to most people. So the bikers don't have the obligation to drive in the car every time. The other summer is already riding a motorcycle, like many of the nomads, some of whom are mileage pigs who cover substantial distances. Of course, a biker also drives a car sometimes. These are people who still ride motorcycles, who ride motorcycles. And just because the machete was visible, I still don't know that it was the machete, the knife that was on Andre Sommer's back, stabbed by cardiopathy, then shot by your own Hells Angels Club members. I don't know. You have to learn to love it too, the path of life that I have chosen, right?
That doesn't change the fact that I take my fate and my things into my own hands and sort things out for myself.
The most successful businessman in the scene was and is Frank Hainebut. He had managed early on to convert the Hells Angels myth into capital. When the Hells Angels celebrated in Hanover's entertainment district Steintor, 10,000 came.
Of course, I have a factory of ideas in my head. The concepts that one has designed have ignited because one has actually only implemented what one would like to have oneself. A lot of fun, good mood, good action at low prices, and that was the recipe for success.
Of course, there was massive reconstruction, the Steintor Viertel under Frank Hainebut, under the Hells Angels, but that is supposed to have changed a bit again now. After watching the videos, I repeatedly received messages saying there was peace and celebrations could be held. The question is always whether the starter has failed and that a handful of rockers, some 1%ers, then take over to establish order according to their standards and without a law book, without a constitutional state. You always have to ask yourself, who wants that? So I don't want rocker gangs to maintain law and order in Schleswig-Holstein as they see fit.
Public opinion turned against us and the authorities ended their cozy relationship. There were raids in Steintor and the police publicly called for a boycott of the Angels pubs. The pressure worked.
We disbanded because the aggression in the charter was very high. People were just fed up with the constant defamation. Lies that were spread about us, about our families, about the club, and also attempts to destroy one or another life path.
I find it troubling that the state recommends where people should or shouldn't party. So if there are no signs yet that criminal business is being conducted there, that they are criminal and violent locations, then to say, please do not visit this location of this and that person, I as a liberal already feel from the state patronized. But people should still decide that for themselves. That's questionable to me. It's still questionable to me.
Since June 2012, Angel's Place in Hanover has been vacant. Frank Hainebut lives in Mallorca. However, rumors suggest he still holds influence in the German rocker scene.
Yes, so I myself still remember that even when problems arose, no matter in which regions, it was always then talked about. Many then have Frank Hainebut called, due to his body size, was also an amateur boxer and so on. Where he hits, no grass grows. He only went to Mallorca, then was also imprisoned for 2 years in pretrial detention in Spain due to allegations of forced prostitution and similar things. Frank Paneblut has always tried to break and subdue. I believe the processes are still pending, even after 10 years. But that was definitely a pretty nice power refuge that was built there. There were rumors at times that the Scepter was in Hanover. It is said to have had 50 to 70 members, and they celebrate and whatever else. All sorts of people have their... He had to be there, so to speak, when Frank Hainebut celebrated his birthday, the Christmas party. He was said to have always been legendary at the clubhouse. Yes. That was already a power center, wasn't it? Why is this repeating itself again? I'm sorry, I have to push the second part, guys. I'm sorry, that was the first part that was freely available on Spiegel Television. I briefly hope we can push the second part. I'm sorry. Sometimes when you submit content on YouTube, it can lead to a scandal, but it's also fine that we do it this way today. A brief insight. So much more remains for part 2, which we hopefully are also allowed to show freely. Of course, we are also allowed to show it freely. Just a small insight into what was going on and how the excursion took place. Today, I want my paid admission fee refunded, thanks to the mods, channel members, and everyone who was present. Thanks to the sponsors. Thank you, whoever one or the other who wants to support this with Philippe 10, because it's plus 10% discount. Thank you. Anyone who likes to grill at Beef Bandits with Philippe 10 can save 10% there. Anyone who doesn't have the book yet, written by myself but not printed by myself, is welcome to take a look. A very beautified book. I don't even know what to say about it, what I've heard about it, but thank you all for joining me on this journey. I appreciate it. Otherwise, here on YouTube and on Twitch, you can leave a Prime subscription. Those who don't want to, don't have to. Otherwise, everything remains free. We continue to try to stand up for democracy and anti-violence work. And that's it from me for today. And as always, I remain with a Ciao Kokor from the coast. No, I always remain with a Ahoy from the coast.